This is why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. My sister and I work in the medical field and we're renting a house together. The rent was pretty high and we quickly decided that it would be helpful if we got a roommate. However, after weeks of looking, we still couldn't find anyone. My sister and I were desperate and posted in the Facebook groups about needing a roommate. This woman in her late 30s named Tammy answered, and we were excited that we had found our new roommate. When we met her and talked to her, everything seemed normal. She seemed nice and put together. My sister's in residency and I'm in nursing school, so we made it clear that we needed a respectful roommate who understood our schedules. When she first moved in, everything seemed to be going well. After the first week, I had a friend come over to hang out. While my friend was there, Tammy came into my room and introduced herself. I could smell the alcohol on her breath as she spoke, and she started hitting on my friend. She kept telling her how she was down for hot girl bye shit. She was doing this all while aggressively petting my labradoodle. Luckily, my friend just laughed it off and we assumed that she was drunk. Then Tammy went to her room, and after about 10 minutes, we started hearing moaning coming from her room. She didn't have any guests over and we tried to ignore it at first, but the moaning escalated to screaming. We could hear things being thrown around in the room as well. After 20 minutes of this, we got worried and went to get my sister. Part 2, why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. My sister talked to Tammy and she apologized, saying she was just sleeping. About 2 weeks later, my sister stayed at her boyfriend's house and I was stuck with Tammy. I made myself dinner and I was eating, and that's when Tammy came downstairs. She was blasted drunk again and went to the stove. She started reheating my food, and that's when I asked her if she wanted some, but she said she was just stirring my food for me. After I ate my dinner, I went to look and she had taken all of it. Over time, I noticed she would eat our food without permission, even when I asked her not to. When I'd call her out on it, she would lie and say she didn't touch my food. We used to keep our liquor in the kitchen, but she started drinking from the bottles and we had to move them to our rooms. She would go into my room because I had a bottle of liquor and she drank it, then fill it up with water. However, it was easy to tell because it was whiskey. One night I was studying for one of my exams and I hear loud screaming. I assumed it was coming from her room, but when I opened my door, I realized it was coming from outside. I went downstairs and saw her laying on the floor of the backyard, screaming her head off. I told her that she was being loud and the neighbors would call the cops. She got up and apologized and then went to her room. However, she repeated this again a couple days later. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. Part 3 of why you might not want to use Facebook to find a roommate. A week after she started screaming in the backyard, my sister and I decided that we needed to get her out. We had a house meeting and told Tammy that she has a month to move out. At first, she was crying and upset, acting like she didn't know what she did wrong, but then she accepted it. However, the last month with her was the worst month of my life. I was concluding the semester at nursing school and it was about to be finals. She started eating me and my sister's packed lunches out of our lunch boxes. She also started breaking dishes on purpose, leaving the glass where our corgi and labradoodle would play. When I confronted her about it, she blew it off, saying that it was an accident and hadn't gone around to cleaning it. One night, she sat me and my sister down, threatening to sue us because we were trying to get rid of her during COVID. My sister wasn't having it and told her to get her lawyer. I installed 7 cameras in the house because I couldn't trust her while we weren't there and I was worried for our dogs. She would put her cigarette butts and ashes in our dog's food bowl, so I knew I needed to watch her. Whenever I checked the cameras, she was always up to something like eating our food, looking through our things, and going into our bedrooms when we weren't around. The craziest part of all of this is when she finally moved out and we saw her room. It was a complete mess. There was menstrual blood all over the carpet, scratches on the wall, and she left a painting that she had done of our house burning while she walked away. I obtained custody of my sister's 3 kids back in 2018 after she left them alone for 2 weeks to go on a drug bender. It was a huge transition for the kiddos because not only did they have to switch schools and daycares, but they also wouldn't be able to see their mother anymore. I've adopted the kids and have full custody of them. They're doing better now and leading happier lives. Recently though, my sister was released from prison and wants to see them. She called me begging to have a visit with them and telling me that I could give them back now because she was out of prison. I've had a talk with the 9-year-old and he says he doesn't want to see his mom yet. He told me that he still hates her for leaving him alone. The girls have no memories of her. The smallest was only 3 months old the last time she saw her. I feel like I could have helped them foster a better relationship with their mom, but I don't want to force them to meet her if they don't want to. My close family has told me that the oldest doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's my fault the little ones don't remember their mother because I didn't take them to see her when she was in prison. They also told me that it's my responsibility to force them to meet her even when they don't want to because it's what's best for them and they shouldn't grow up without their mother. I've spoken to a professional about this and they said it should be up to the kids. Am I being a jerk to my sister by not letting her kids see her if they don't want to? Part 2 of not letting my sister see her kids. I gave my oldest 2 weeks to really think about whether he wanted to see my sister or not. I figured that his original decision might have been made out of anger, so I wanted to give him time to make such an important decision. Ultimately, he decided that he did actually want to talk to her. I was a bit surprised, but we set up a Zoom call between them with me supervising. Right before the call, he admitted to me that he wanted to talk to her just to see if she'd say sorry. She didn't. Instead, she opened the call with, "Hello, it's been so long. I guess you're ready to come home with me now?" That's when she noticed I was sitting there with him. She immediately launched into accusations of alienation, followed by saying if I don't give the kids back, then she'd call the police and say I kidnapped them. My oldest was disgusted and asked her if she was going to apologize to him. She had the audacity to ask what for. At that point, he shut off the Zoom call. I asked him if he was okay, but he spent the rest of the afternoon in his room by himself. That night, he told me that he never wanted to talk to her again. I told him he didn't have to talk to her again if he didn't want to, and we'd never give him back over to her. Before now, I honestly never considered myself as their parent, even after legally adopting them. Now I realize those kids are my kids and they're going to be for the rest of my life. I met my ex in college and we started a business right after our senior year. Eventually, our business started having financial troubles. He came from wealth, so I asked him to get a loan from his parents and he agreed. 2 months later, he asked for all the money back. We were always planning to pay it, but mutually decided on manageable installments. He said he needed it because his father was sick, but he wouldn't give details or let me call his mother. The money was already invested in our business. I had to take some out and give away all my personal savings. 3 weeks after this, he called me and ended things. He also wanted out of the business. The only time I saw him was with lawyers when we divided our business assets and he withdrew his name from all the documents. I was devastated, emotionally traumatized, and had no finances to fall back on. on. I moved back in with my mother and later found out that his father was never sick. 5 years later, I never gave up on my business and it paid off. Now I live a comfortable life. In the midst of lockdown, I got a message from my ex saying that his parents cut him out of their will. He had a child with a woman who left him and he was now struggling to feed his son. He said since he was instrumental to the business foundation, he deserved a cut from it now that it was successful. My lawyer said he has no legal claims to the business. However, my best friend thinks I'm being selfish because he was responsible for the business idea and his initial investment was twice as much as mine. Am I wrong for not wanting to help him out? Part 2 of not wanting to help my ex after he left our business. I found out through friends that both of his parents had passed away during those 5 years that we didn't have contact. After receiving the message from him stating that his parents cut him out of the will and he was struggling to feed his son, I looked into it. I was able to verify that he does indeed have a son, but he wasn't cut out of his parents' will. The money simply just wasn't as much as he was expecting. Even though he did lose his job, he had a lot of money to fall back on. I had done an interview in a local newspaper about my business and I'm guessing my ex may have read it. This is probably how he found out my business was doing so well. Since he didn't need that money, my only explanation for why he reached out to me is that he felt entitled to my success and the money I made. My best friend admitted to me that he reached out to her before he emailed me. After some coaxing, she told me that they had been casually speaking for years. I'm not the most confrontational person, so I just cut her out of my life. I found out yesterday through Facebook that they're engaged. Now I see she was just trying to get me to give my money to her future fiancé. This is why best friends can be abusive too. I had moved to England with my ex around 3 to 4 years ago. We had broken up and remained good friends and just rented a house together. We weren't hostile and learned that we were better as friends than in a relationship. I started going out to local bars and shops to make friends because I didn't know anyone there. This is when I met a guy named Craig who quickly became my best friend. He was a little odd, had family in the area and his own flat. Shortly after meeting Craig, my ex moved back in with his family and I couldn't afford to make rent on my own. This is when Craig and I decided to rent a house together. We weren't romantically or sexually involved, we were strictly just friends. He was the type of guy who always had a few girls in tow, so he'd never be without a love interest. I started seeing a guy named Jay who would stay over a few times throughout the week, eventually becoming my boyfriend. Craig quickly made it known that he hated it. We would argue about him and I made it known to him that we were only friends, so he needed to stay out of my dating life. One night, Craig pounced on me in my room, getting on top. He put his knees on my arms and started to strangle me. He was saying things like, "Where is he now?" And I honestly thought I was about to die. As I felt his grip tighten, I thought of my mom who was only 4 to 5 hours away. I thought of how she'd never know what happened to me or how she'd have to identify the body of her only child. Part 2, why best friends can be abusive too. By some miracle, I kicked Craig off of me and ran for my life. He had double locked the front door, hid in my bag, and smashed my iPhone. I was running down the stairs with him yelling right behind me that he was going to kill me. I knew the back door was open from him having a smoke earlier. I ran for it and made it to the street. I was barefoot, in shorts, and a pajama top. I ran for what felt like ever towards the town. 30 minutes later, I used a payphone and called the police. They picked me up and I told them the story. They took me to the station and took photos of my neck that had bruising along with my head that was bleeding from when he smashed me into the kitchen wall earlier. I sat in the patrol car as they went inside of my house to pick him up. They found him in the streets looking for me. They arrested him and put him in a cell overnight while dropping me off to gather my things. I was terrified he'd be released and come back at any moment, so I grabbed just a few of my things in a rush. I didn't have my phone or any money. I drove to a patrol station bleeding from my head with no shoes and bruised up. I broke down using their phone to call my mom. She was annoyed that I had woken her up at first, but once I explained what happened, she sent me $200 to fill up my tank and get something to drink to calm down. Then I drove to my parents' house. Craig got out in the morning and it was his word against mine. I blocked him on everything and changed my number, cutting off all contact. I sometimes still get flashbacks of that night. I've been living with my roomies Ashley and Bree for the last year. We have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment and each pay $1,300 a month because we live in a pretty expensive area. Prior to moving in, we all used a room randomizer to pick who would choose rooms first. I got first pick and chose the largest room. I'm really neat and organized while my roommates aren't, so I wanted to have my own bathroom. Ashley got the medium-sized room and Bree got the smallest. Ashley and I are both full-time college students, so our parents help by paying our rent. Bree was full-time but is taking a break over summer and fall, so she's paying her own rent. With this new development, Bree is demanding that my family pay more money since I have the largest room. We've always paid even amounts, so this was random. I offered to switch rooms with Bree, but she refused and no one wants to pay the amount that she's demanding. There's no way to get out of our lease, which makes me feel like Bree is extorting my family. I think this idea of paying more comes from recent discussions about money because I've been planning my 21st birthday party and wanted to go all out, which is something I never do. I mentioned in front of her that I was planning to spend a couple thousand that I've saved for a long time specifically for this occasion. Now it feels like Bree knows that I have money and my family is taking care of me, so she's trying to extort us. My family refuses to pay the increased amount and I feel like there's no way out of this situation. Am I wrong for not wanting to pay more and sticking to our original agreement? A habit I've had for almost 3 years now is that every day I write down a description of the outfits my friends are wearing. I do this because we go to school together and I see them every day. The exception of when I've done this is when school was virtual or over summers and breaks. I've had the same friends for a while, so the data I have on some of them is dating back to when I started doing this. At first, it was an experiment to see how often people repeat the outfits they wear. If I could find this out, then I know how often it's acceptable for me to repeat an outfit. Then it became a habit and I like doing it. It's cool to see how their styles have changed over the years, and sometimes I can predict what they'd wear based on this data. I also like the routine and going over my findings. My friends have never known that I've done this. I had a friend over yesterday and I went to the bathroom while she was left in my room. I keep all my data on Google Documents and create a new one each month so I can easily copy and paste for chart making. I had left my computer open and the document was pulled up on another tab. On the original tab, my friend and I were watching YouTube. My friend says that she accidentally closed the tab and that's how she found my document. She read through part of it and got really upset, telling me that it's weird. That's when she proceeded to leave and go tell our other friends. They only think that I've been doing this for a month. Am I wrong for tracking their outfits like this? Part 2 of how my friends found out I've been documenting their outfits for 3 years. I asked my friends if I could talk to them, and over the weekend when we were all free, we talked over FaceTime. I explained to them why I started keeping track of their outfits, how long I've done it for, and why I kept doing it. I told them that I was sorry for not telling them and I didn't realize it would make them upset. I told them I'd delete the information if they like and I'll stop doing it if they want me to. 2 of my close friends on the call said that they understood what I was doing better now. They said they didn't really mind that I was recording their outfits, but they would have liked to know first. I promised to run it by them if I do something I think might bother them in the future. They asked for me to show them my data, which I did, and they asked me to send them a copy because they said they honestly found it interesting. My other friend, the one who originally found the data, said that she was a little creeped out by it, but thanked me for explaining. She apologized for reacting so strongly without giving me a chance to explain, and I told her that it's fine and I don't blame her. We're all back to getting along now. My friends are great people. They're a little weird too, which is why we make such great friends. I love them and I'm glad they're so understanding. Lastly, for the people who asked if I have OCD, I'm not sure and I won't be able to get tested until I'm an adult because it's not something my parents would approve of.